Among the most unsettling portions in the entire Torah is the beginning of this week's biblical portion, Parashat Tetze, the wayward and rebellious son, the ben sorer umoreh, a child whose own parents throw up their hands, calling their son a glutton and a drunkard. And astonishingly, for those seemingly insignificant crimes of vice, the son is tried, convicted, and then put to death. Our Talmudic sages add context, and in their view, this shocking rule of the wayward and rebellious son is the tragic culmination of the two sections that precede it in our biblical portion. The first section describes a woman taken at war and brought into the household of her Jewish captor as a wife. The second section describes the laws of inheritance in a polygamous household. A firstborn son is entitled to a double portion of his father's estate, even when he is the child of a wife the father dislikes. So putting these three cases together, the rabbis reconstruct a most unfortunate series of events. A married man goes to war. Overcome by his passions, he abducts a woman and takes her home. This naturally creates domestic strife, leading to a situation where, in the Torah's words, one wife is the loved one and the other is the hated one. The child born into such a home is likely to grow up to be a criminal. As the rabbis put it, Aveira goreret Aveira, one sin leads inevitably to another. In a separate bit of exposition, the rabbis also explain that the child's sins of drunkenness and gluttony actually reveal deeply rooted character flaws. After all, a child with such appetites, raised in a home with such little regard for societal norms, will eventually come to steal, even to kill, in order to continue to overindulge. These two lines of rabbinic interpretation intersect. Petty juvenile crimes can be trivialities, but they can be portents of much worse things to come. It depends on the background and the circumstances of the person committing the crimes. In other words, the ben sorer umoreh, the wayward and rebellious son, is punished more for who he is than for what he did. But what if we got it wrong? Or worse, what if our predictions are actually self-fulfilling? For a young person, trying to overcome difficult family circumstances might be frustrating enough. Imagine what it would be like to know, in that context, that a youthful indiscretion might be treated as a serious crime. It means that in order to succeed, you would have to meet a much higher standard than anyone else. And even that might not be enough. That in and of itself might be reason enough to rebel angrily against a world so stacked against you. So perhaps this is why the rabbis insisted in a near consensus that the laws of the wayward and rebellious son were never actually implemented in practice. These laws were never carried out. The portion of the rebellious and wayward son challenges us to recognize how unfair prejudice can develop against society's most vulnerable, how we can end up collectively condemning the very people who most desperately need our support, who most desperately need our encouragement. It's not coincidental that we read this portion during the penitential month of Elul, when we reaffirm our own ability to change, to improve, to transcend our own history and surroundings. Though so much about who we are and what we do often seems hardwired into us by genetics or upbringing. Teshuvah, the repentance we do this time of year, is predicated on our ever-present capacity to recreate ourselves in the image of our highest ideals and values. Shabbat Shalom.